So can a good medium-term budget policy statement with key phrases like containing expenditure and showing prudence excite South Africans? Well, they're not going to excite you, but they should give you some relief if and when they happen. Can a decent medium-term budget policy statement avert a sovereign credit ratings downgrade? What constitutes a decent medium-term budget policy statement or a good mini budget? This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight to discuss the budget and its main custodian so far, Pravin Gordhan, is front and centre today. As we heard yesterday, Freedom Under Law and the Helen Suzman Foundation have applied to court to have criminal charges against the finance minister quashed. How do we stop that pulling and pushing and all the infighting between government, civil society and, of course, within the ANC itself, actually stop distracting from the key job of growing the economy? Joining me for a discussion is Mohale Ralibitso, Chief Executive of the Black Business Council, Helen Mukoki, who is Chief Executive of the South African Chamber of Commerce, that's SACCI, and Piet, who is Legal Research at the Helen Suzman Foundation. First questions first, gentlemen. I mean, it's, 36 hours or so to go before the Finance Minister stands up and delivers the medium-term budget policy statement. In your opinion, is there an understudy to this budget? Has Des van Rooyen perhaps been handed a spare copy of the budget and told, practice just in case, or will Pravin Gordhan be delivering the budget?
I think the minister will be delivering the budget.
The minister will be delivering the budget, we know this. Will that minister be Pravin Gordhan?
I think it'll definitely be Pravin Gordhan, and he'll be with his normal charges of capable cadres in the Treasury.
And he will be saying, no doubt, Ellen Mukoki, because he always does. And I'm just wondering where he places it. Thank you, President Zuma, for your great leadership. I expect him to say that. Do you expect him to say that?
I think that he should say that. Because as you'd appreciate, all the ministers, they serve under the guidance of the president, and he's a member of the cabinet, he's a member of the ruling political party. In any event, it's not a personal issue, it's not a personality contest, and what it is really is that this is a job. You're the minister under that particular cabinet. You don't have many options. If you're not a minister under that cabinet, you resign, and then you can say whatever you like to say outside of that particular forum.
But he's a team player, he's the finance minister, he's a team player. The question now for the Helen Suzman Foundation, if we look at that, Piet, Olivier, I mean, you guys have come out very strongly and said the charges that have been levelled against the finance minister, the current serving finance minister, are spurious. They need to be dropped. Otherwise, the National Prosecuting Authority is going to look a little bit silly.
Yeah, look, consensus in the legal community seems to be that the charges are without foundation and that on any plausible set of facts, they're going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to prove.
Do we know exactly what the charges are? Have we seen a final charge sheet? There's not sort of an annexure on the back where the juicy stuff is that everyone's ignoring.
Look, we've seen the charge sheet. We've seen what the charges are against the minister. It's 2 counts of fraud and 1 count of theft. And as we've said, on any plausible reading of the facts, those charges are just completely invalid.
So then what happens? I mean, you're going to court now to force the withdrawal of the charges. Isn't it in the best interests of the country for the minister to go to court on the 2nd of November and have the charges treated with the contempt they deserve in open court? Or will your application do have the same effect?
No, our application will do exactly that. Like, we are going to court, and it is a judge that's going to be hearing whether or not the matters have legal foundation. And if the judge knocks them out of court before they go to criminal trial, what he'd be saying is that the charges are so bad that they should not even go to trial. And we think that constitutes clearing his name.
What is the consequence of losing?
Well, then the minister goes to trial, and then his name will be cleared at trial.
If the court finds him not guilty, of course,
yes,
on those fraud charges. Is the Helen Suzman Foundation doing the right thing?
That's a question for them.
no, from a Black Business Council perspective.
No, but my estimation, any organization that's in the space that the Helen Suzman Foundation is in would be at fault not to engage the issues in the manner that they're doing so. So we have nothing but support
There's
for
a
them.
career in politics for you yet, by the way. So
ours is a pluralist contest. We can't have a singular approach to handling matters, and we rely on these institutions.
No, we most certainly do. And Mukoki, I mean, is the Helen Suzman Foundation doing the right thing?
Well, just like Mohale says, we can't comment.
No, you can't use his words.
I know. My own words are that South Africa's courts are independent, and one of the things that we push more than anything else is the idea that this particular judiciary is very independent, not only because that's what we're saying as SACCI, but if you look at the latest World Economic Forum report, and in particular the Global Competitive Index report, you'll find that of the 12 things that they measure, institutions is one of the biggest things. And for South Africa, by the way, the independence and strength of the judiciary in South Africa is ranked almost 24th out of 140 countries. So we're not necessarily bothered by all the noise around charges, whatever the case might be. Mr. Pravin Gordhan, as a minister, as any other person would be charged, is innocent until a particular court, which is competent, proves otherwise. So whether people want to intercept that situation or not, it's part of their democratic right to do that. But from our point of view is that we stay out of matters which are sub judice.
Aren't we? It's not sub judice, it hasn't appeared in court yet. That's correct interpretation, isn't it, Piet? I mean, that I think
he's
that's
been charged.
He's yet to appear in court.
Yes.
The issue here is that the courts are being used far too often to resolve fairly minor issues. Isn't that a problem for a democracy?
I think it would be better if issues that shouldn't go to courts don't go to courts. But unfortunately, when the NPA makes the kind of decision that it's made here, then people are forced to go to courts. We'd prefer not to, but unfortunately we find ourselves in the circumstances we find ourselves in.
I mean, one of the most wonderful things about being in South Africa in the 21st century right now, if you had made, and I forget who the National Prosecuting Authority head was or the chief prosecutor under Adrian Vlok, but if you put Adrian Vlok as Mampara of the Week in the Sunday Times this last weekend, people with jackboots would have come down and taken you out and taken your family and said they would have taken you out. The fact that the Sunday Times this week could put Sean Abrams in as the Mampara of the Week, the head of the National Prosecuting Authority as Mampara of the Week, that tells me a lot of good things about the democracy in South Africa. Will the medium-term budget policy statement, which is why we're here, deliver the same sort of positivity, I wonder?
I hope it does. Where the Treasury team and the Minister are going to find pockets of savings to feed new areas of expenditure, which are quite substantial, it's going to cost us a fortune to make good on the tuition-free education for the people who fall below the 600,000 mark, and we await to hear in detail what that resolve is going to be. But there are a number of areas where you cannot argue that there isn't a need for more financial support from the government at large, and specifically for Treasury to prioritize. But at the other hand, there's the not so small matter of the expenditure ceiling that's been set, which has to be adhered to. So it's going to be a difficult one for the Minister and the team to navigate. But they've proven themselves equal to the task before, and one has no reason to doubt that they'll make good.
I haven't ever gone to a budget or a medium-term budget policy statement without the precursor. This is the most difficult budget a minister has faced in the modern democracy. And it gets harder and harder every time, Alan. I mean, your members must be squealing to you. They are struggling out of this beautiful Sandton that we live in the bubble of Sandton. In the real world, South African companies are coming under huge pressure. A lot of experts, for example, say we need an increase in VAT. The number of small business people from small towns South Africa then that deluge me with emails telling me what an idiot I am to allow people like that to breathe, because the real pressure is happening amongst the 80% of South Africans who are struggling to pay their bills on a monthly basis. I mean, that's real, isn't it?
That is the real thing. Of course, the challenge is huge, Bruce. At any other time, as you say, for a Minister of Finance to come in at this particular time with the amount of pressure that he's experiencing from outside, the ratings agencies are waiting. They are here, and they want to issue a statement before December holidays, and it's going to be quite difficult. So he's sitting there with a balancing act. There are social demands which are really, really serious and really urgent, such as Mohale said. The education piece is a very, very important thing. The social security piece is still another important piece, because more and more people are coming into that space because of lack of jobs. We're still paying about 16 million social grants per month, which is a very, very high number. Not altogether outrageously high compared to other nations, but it is a big number because it reflects that most people are actually not working.
I mean, the fact that National Treasury in each annual budget in February budgets more for 2 and 3 years hence implies their own lack of faith in our ability to get our own economy going. How are you guys pushing for growth?
Well, we are, because we're making the right noises, in particular, to make sure...
I can make all the noise I like,
yes,
it's not going to get growth.
We're making the right noises, in particular, by engaging government ministers. We're engaging the presidency. We are members of BUSA, as you say. We're the biggest affiliate within BUSA. And there are 5 working groups that we work with. I mean, the PVC themselves are part of that, to make sure that we drive and do the things that have to be done. The issue around the NTP, for instance, is very, very, very critical. What our members are complaining mostly about in that particular regard is, A, you've announced things before, but we're not actually seeing it on the ground. So one of the critical elements around this particular piece is to make sure that where budgets have been allocated, that the implementation and the execution thereof is actually taking place. We should actually criminalize in South Africa today departments of state which are rolling over a budget that was so required for either a social spend or an infrastructure spend. And that has actually been happening. The third element of that, of course, is the one that relates to government has made a lot of noise around paying people on time, but we still have a lot of elements, especially in the SME sector, of people who are waiting for accounts to be paid 90 days, 120 days.
It kills businesses.
But it kills the business. Yeah. So that idea says you're not creating jobs, which is a big issue. Unemployment is a big issue. Inflation is a big issue. Interest rates are a big issue. So those are the things that our members are really, really concerned about. Coupled with that, you have the issue of the economic growth cycle. So if you're not growing the economy, you can't create jobs. So my members cannot sell more products. No. And then they freeze on the headlights because the interest rates are about to go up because inflation is going up. Do we or do we not invest in investment expenditure that will actually create more capacity?
Why would anybody do that in such an uncertain environment? So, Mohale Ralibitso, how do we create the certain environment?
There are a number of key policy issues which remain unaddressed. We have to dust those things off from whatever shelf they're sitting on and say, well, here's our position. Because some of those things the global investment community may not agree with us about. But we have to put them out so that it's a known variable in terms of where the country stands. And as Mr. Mukoki has spoken to some of those issues, we've not only made noise around the issue of payments, for example, together with the Treasury, so one also has to give government credit where it is doing some things correctly. We've established a payment call center where any business that's not being paid on time can engage, they can walk in, and they'll be assisted in terms of getting their payments. And it is precisely because we're aware of the impact that has on the cash flows of businesses, which is it's the difference between staying in and coming out of business. Things like that are an important indicator as well of saying that we've said that government is going to be a strategic procurer of services. It has a role to play. So we're trying to assist government in terms of ensuring that it can play that so that there should be no doubt about whether when we say we commit to time-years payment, whether it does or doesn't happen.
Piet, final word to you. Wouldn't it be so much easier for government to do precisely what these gentlemen are asking it to do if government ministers and civil servants, senior civil servants, weren't looking over their shoulder the whole time, wondering who was going to stick a knife in it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
There we go. At that point, because he's agreed with me, I think I'm going to leave it. Always leave on a high note. My thanks to guests this evening, Mohale Ralibitso, Chief Executive of the Black Business Council, and Helen Mukoki, CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, that's SACI, and Piet, legal researcher at the Helen Suzman Foundation. Lots of water still to run under this particular bridge. No doubt lots of big stories to break and lots more announcements. And then in 36 hours' time, we'll have the medium-term budget policy statement. More money makers in the future. For now, though, have a very good evening. Good night.